For centuries, the ancient Greek world was divided. City-states fought against city-states. Athens battled Sparta. Sparta challenged Thebes, and endless rivalries weakened the Greek world. While the Greeks fought among themselves, a new power was quietly rising in the north, a kingdom many Greeks once considered barbaric. Macedon. At the center of this transformation stood a remarkable king, Philip II of Macedon. Philip was not just a ruler. He was a military genius. When he took the throne in 359 BC, Macedon was fragile and threatened by enemies on every side. But Philip had a vision. He would turn this struggling kingdom into the most powerful military force the Greek world had ever seen. Philip completely transformed the Macedonian army. Instead of relying on traditional Greek hoplites, he created a new and deadly formation, the Macedonian phalanx. Soldiers carried massive spears called sarissas, nearly 6 meters long. When hundreds of these spears pointed forward together, the formation became nearly impossible to break. Enemy soldiers could barely reach the Macedonians before facing a wall of deadly steel. Philip also introduced highly trained cavalry units, fast, disciplined, and devastating in battle. This elite force would later become famous as the Companion Cavalry. Together, these innovations turned Macedon into a military powerhouse. But Philip's greatest achievement was not only building an army, it was preparing the man who would one day lead it, his son, a young prince named Alexander the Great. By the time Alexander reached his teenage years, he was already different from other princes. Most royal children grew up surrounded by luxury and comfort. Alexander grew up surrounded by warriors. From an early age, he watched military drills, battlefield strategies, and political negotiations. His father believed that a future king must understand war, and Alexander absorbed every lesson. But Philip knew that strength alone would not create a great ruler. A king also needed wisdom. So he made an extraordinary decision. He hired the greatest philosopher of the ancient world to educate his son, Aristotle. Under Aristotle's guidance, Alexander studied philosophy, science, medicine, literature, and politics. He read the works of Homer and became fascinated by the heroic stories of Achilles. In fact, Alexander would later carry a copy of the Iliad with him on military campaigns. To Alexander, Achilles was not just a character in a story. He was an inspiration, a model of courage, glory, and destiny. These lessons shaped the young prince's worldview. He began to believe that he too was destined for greatness. But knowledge alone does not make a conqueror. A true leader must prove himself on the battlefield. And soon, Alexander would get that chance. Meanwhile, Philip's ambitions continued to grow. His dream was no longer limited to Macedon. He wanted to unite all of Greece under his leadership. Many Greek city-states resisted. They feared Macedonian dominance. Tensions rose. Allies formed. Armies gathered. The Greek world was heading toward a confrontation that would change history forever. And when that moment arrived, a young prince would ride into battle for the very first time. The world was about to witness the beginning of a legend. By the year 338 BC, the Greek world stood on the edge of a decisive conflict. King Philip II of Macedon had spent years strengthening his kingdom. His army was disciplined. His strategies were unmatched. But many Greek city-states still refused to accept Macedonian dominance. Among them were two of the most powerful cities in Greece, Athens and Thebes. Together they formed an alliance to stop Philip once and for all. War had become inevitable. Both sides prepared their armies. Thousands of soldiers marched across the rugged landscapes of Greece. Soon, the two forces would meet near a small town called Chaeronea. This battle would determine the future of Greece. And unexpectedly, it would also become the first great moment in the life of a young prince, Alexander. The armies gathered on the plains near Chaeronea. On one side stood the allied Greek forces, seasoned warriors from Athens and Thebes. Among them were the legendary Sacred Band of Thebes, an elite unit feared across Greece. They had never been defeated. Facing them stood the army of Macedon, disciplined soldiers armed with long sarissas, phalanx formations stretching across the battlefield, and leading them, King Philip himself. But on the left wing of the Macedonian army stood someone else, a young commander. Only 18 years old, Prince Alexander the Great. This would be his first real battle, and it would determine whether he was truly worthy of the destiny many believed awaited him. As the sun rose over the battlefield, the armies slowly advanced. The ground trembled beneath thousands of marching feet. Shields locked together, spears pointed forward. The clash was inevitable. When the two armies finally collided, the noise of battle echoed across the valley. Metal struck metal. War cries filled the air. Philip commanded the right wing of the Macedonian army. He carefully maneuvered his troops, slowly pulling the Athenian forces out of position. It was a calculated move, a trap. And while the Athenians followed Philip's retreat, another attack was forming, led by the young prince. The critical moment, Alexander led the Macedonian cavalry forward. The companion cavalry thundered across the battlefield. Horses galloped through clouds of dust. Their target, the strongest warriors in the Greek army, the sacred band of Thebes. This elite unit had never been broken before, but Alexander attacked with speed, precision, and fearless determination. The young prince charged directly into the enemy lines. For a moment, the battlefield descended into chaos, but Alexander did not hesitate. His cavalry smashed into the Theban formation while the Macedonian phalanx pressed forward. The pressure was overwhelming. Slowly, the legendary sacred band began to collapse. For the first time in history, they were defeated. The Battle of Chaeronea ended in a decisive Macedonian victory. The combined armies of Athens and Thebes were shattered. Greece would never be the same again. But beyond the political consequences of the battle, something else had happened. On that battlefield, an 18-year-old prince had proven himself as a commander. His courage and leadership impressed the entire Macedonian army. Even his father, King Philip, now knew something important. His son was no longer just a prince. He was a warrior, a leader, and perhaps, one day, a conqueror. But fate had even greater plans, because within a few years, a shocking event would shake the Macedonian kingdom, an event that would suddenly place the entire empire in Alexander's hands. After the decisive victory at the Battle of Chaeronea, the balance of power in Greece had completely shifted. The once divided Greek city-states now stood under the influence of Macedon. King Philip II of Macedon had achieved what few believed possible. He had united Greece, but Philip's ambitions did not stop there. His next goal was far greater. He planned to launch a massive invasion of the powerful Achaemenid Persian Empire. For generations, the Persian Empire had dominated much of the known world. Now Philip wanted revenge for the Persian invasions of Greece that had occurred centuries earlier. Preparations for war began. Troops were assembled. Commanders were chosen. The Greek states were organized into a military alliance known as the League of Corinth. Philip was appointed as its leader. Everything seemed ready. The greatest military campaign in Greek history was about to begin, but fate had other plans. Behind the scenes, the royal court of Macedon was filled with tension and political intrigue. Philip had recently married another woman named Cleopatra Eurydice, a noblewoman from a powerful Macedonian family. This marriage created serious problems within the royal household, because Alexander's mother, Olympias, saw it as a threat to her son's future. If Philip had a new heir with his new wife, Alexander's claim to the throne could be challenged. Arguments broke out within the royal family. Alliances shifted.
The strategic
Suspicion spread
Chaeronea
throughout the court.
became the
For
stage
the first time
for a
in years,
decisive confrontation.
the Macedonian royal family was divided. No one could predict how dangerous this tension would become. In 336 BC, a grand celebration was held in the Macedonian capital of Aegae. It was the wedding of Philip's daughter. Kings, diplomats, and generals gathered from across Greece. The festival was meant to celebrate Macedon's power and unity. Philip planned to use the occasion to display his dominance over Greece before launching the Persian campaign. The ceremony was magnificent. Music filled the air. Crowds gathered to watch the royal procession. Philip walked proudly into the theater, surrounded by his guards and companions. But on that very day, history would suddenly take a shocking turn. As the king entered the theater, a man stepped forward from the crowd. His name was Pausanias of Orestis. He was one of Philip's own bodyguards. Without warning, Pausanias rushed toward the king. In a single swift movement, he stabbed Philip. The king collapsed instantly. Panic erupted in the theater. Soldiers rushed forward. The assassin attempted to escape, but he was quickly chased down and killed by Philip's companions. Within moments, the most powerful man in Greece was dead. King Philip II of Macedon, the architect of Macedonian power, had been assassinated. The news spread rapidly throughout Macedon. Shock turned into uncertainty. Who would rule the kingdom now? Philip had been preparing to invade the Persian Empire. His army was ready. His alliances were fragile. Without a strong leader, everything could collapse. Enemies inside and outside Macedon were watching closely. Some believed the Macedonian Empire would fall apart. Others began plotting for power. But amid the chaos, one young man stepped forward. A man who had already proven himself on the battlefield. A man who had been trained for leadership since childhood. A man only 20 years old. Alexander the Great. Within days, the young prince would claim the throne of Macedon. And soon, the world would learn his name. In the sudden aftermath of the assassination of Philip II of Macedon, the Macedonian kingdom stood at a dangerous crossroads. The death of the king created uncertainty across the land. Rivals within the royal court began to whisper. Enemies beyond the borders began to hope. Many believed Macedon would fall into chaos. After all, the heir to the throne was only 20 years old, a young prince named Alexander the Great. But those who underestimated him were about to learn a powerful lesson. Alexander moved quickly. Within days of his father's death, he secured the loyalty of the Macedonian army. The generals who had fought beside Philip now pledged their allegiance to his son. Alexander was officially proclaimed King of Macedon. But claiming the throne was only the beginning. Keeping it would be far more difficult. The moment news of Philip's death spread across Greece, rebellions began to rise. Several Greek city-states believed this was their chance to break free from Macedonian control. Rumors spread that the young king lacked experience. Some even believed he would be easily defeated. Among the cities watching closely was the powerful city of Thebes. Athens also began to reconsider its loyalty to Macedon. Across the region, rebellion was beginning to take shape. If Alexander failed to act quickly, his kingdom could collapse before it even began. But Alexander did not hesitate. He acted with speed that shocked the entire Greek world. Instead of waiting for his enemies to gather strength, Alexander marched south with his army. The speed of his movement was astonishing. City after city quickly surrendered. Many leaders who had expected a weak young king suddenly faced a determined warrior. Alexander showed both diplomacy and strength. Those who accepted his authority were spared. Those who resisted faced destruction. Soon the rebellions began to fade. But one city made a fatal mistake.
The strategic
Thebes.
plains
In
of
335 BC, the city of Thebes
decisive
rose in
confrontation.
open rebellion against Macedonian rule. The citizens believed Alexander was far away and unable to respond quickly. But once again, they underestimated him. Alexander marched his army south with incredible speed. Before the city fully realized what had happened, the Macedonian army had already arrived at its gates. The siege was short but brutal. The Macedonian forces stormed the city. The result was devastating. The city of Thebes was destroyed. Thousands were killed. Thousands more were sold into slavery. It was a harsh message to the rest of Greece. Rebellion would not be tolerated. After the fall of Thebes, no Greek city dared to challenge Alexander again. The young king had proven that he possessed both courage and ruthless determination. With Greece firmly under his control, Alexander turned his attention toward a far greater goal. The dream his father had once planned, the invasion of the mighty, Achaemenid Persian Empire. For generations, the Persian Empire had ruled vast territories stretching across Asia. Its king, Darius III, commanded enormous wealth and armies. Many believed the Persian Empire was unstoppable, but Alexander believed otherwise. In 334 BC, he gathered his army, approximately 40,000 soldiers, infantry, cavalry, veteran warriors who had fought under his father. Standing before them was a young king ready to risk everything. Alexander crossed the narrow waters of the Hellespont. With that single step, he entered Asia. It was the beginning of one of the greatest military campaigns in history, a campaign that would change the ancient world forever.